What if I told you that 90% of people will live and die without ever realizing they were trapped inside an invisible pattern? Every morning they wake up thinking the same thoughts, doubting the same dreams, repeating the same habits, and slowly, year after year, their life stays exactly the same. Not because they are incapable, not because they lack intelligence, but because they never discovered the hidden law that silently controls their results. There's a reason some people rise from nothing, while others, equally talented, remain stuck for decades. It's not luck, it's not connections, it's not even hard work alone. It's something deeper, something internal, something almost invisible. And once you see it, you cannot unsee it. In the next few minutes, you're going to uncover this law step by step. And if you truly understand the final piece, the way you think about success, money, and your own potential will never be the same again. So listen carefully, because this might be the moment your life begins to shift. The invisible barrier keeping you broke. Take a slow breath. You don't need to focus. You don't need to agree. Just listen. Tonight is not about motivation. It's not about money tips. And it's not about hustle. Tonight is about something quieter, something almost invisible. Because the biggest barrier between you and wealth is not outside of you. It's not the economy. It's not your job. It's not your background. It's a silent rule in your mind. A rule you didn't choose, but you obey every day. The comfortable trap. Most people believe they want more money, but what they really want is more money without changing who they are. And that is the trap. Because growth always demands discomfort, and the human mind loves familiarity more than freedom. Read that again in your mind. Most people don't choose what makes them rich. They choose what feels familiar. The familiar job, the familiar income, the familiar stress, the familiar excuses, and then they call it reality. Why hard work is not enough. You've probably heard this before. Work harder. But millions of people work hard, very hard, and they stay exactly where they are. Because effort without expansion is just repetition. If you repeat the same thinking, the same reactions, the same emotional patterns, you don't grow, you just age. Wealth doesn't respond to effort alone. It responds to who is applying the effort. The identity ceiling. There is a ceiling in your life, not made of glass, not made of money. It's made of identity. You will rarely earn more than the version of yourself you feel safe being. If wealth requires you to risk looking foolish, admit you don't know, fail publicly, start again, most minds quietly say, "No thank you," and they don't even realize they said no. The fear no one admits. People say they fear failure. That's not true. They fear what failure would say about them. They fear becoming the one who tried and failed, the one who wasn't good enough, the one who should have known better. So they don't try seriously. They stay busy, they stay safe, they stay broke. Not financially, mentally. The rich don't feel smarter. Here's something rarely said out loud. Rich people don't wake up feeling smarter than you. They wake up feeling unfinished, curious, willing to be wrong. They don't protect an image, they protect a process. They don't ask, "How do I look?" They ask, "What did I learn?" That single question changes everything over time. the cost of looking smart. Looking smart is expensive. It costs learning, growth, feedback, evolution. Every time you avoid a challenge to protect your image, you pay with time, and time is the most expensive currency. Night reflection. Slow. Lower your shoulders. Think quietly. How many things did you avoid, not because you couldn't do them, but because you didn't want to look bad doing them? No judgment, just awareness. Awareness is the beginning of wealth. Why comfort feels logical. The mind is clever. It will justify comfort with logic. It's not the right time. I need more information. I'll start when I'm ready. But readiness is not a feeling. It's a decision. And most people wait for a feeling that never arrives. The quiet difference. There are two types of people listening right now. One group will feel calm, then forget this message tomorrow. The other group will feel slightly uncomfortable. That discomfort is not anxiety, it's recognition. It's the mind realizing there is another way to live. The first shift. The first shift toward wealth is simple. Not easy, but simple. Stop asking, what does this say about me? Start asking, what is this teaching me? Mistakes become data. Failure becomes feedback. Effort becomes strength, and identity begins to expand. Sleep programming. Affirmative tone. Let these ideas settle. You don't need to force change. Change follows understanding. Quietly repeat in your mind, I am allowed to grow. I am allowed to be unfinished. I am allowed to learn in public. Wealth is not a reward for perfection. It is a reward for persistence. Closing and CTA. Very calm. If you're still listening, something in you is already different. Not louder, not aggressive, just more open. This channel is not for everyone. It's for builders, for thinkers, for people who play long games. Subscribe to premium audiobooks, not for motivation, but for mental wealth. In the next episode, we'll explore the two minds that create two completely different futures. For now, rest. Growth is already working. Two minds, two futures. Settling the mind. Take another slow breath. You don't need to change anything tonight. You don't need to fix your life. Just listen. Because the difference between the life you have and the life you imagine is not intelligence. It's not luck. It's not opportunity. It's the lens through which you interpret everything that happens to you. Two people can live the same moment and walk away with completely different futures. One event, two interpretations. Imagine this. Two people fail at the same thing. A business idea collapses. A project doesn't work. An opportunity slips away. Nothing dramatic, just disappointment. One person quietly thinks, this proves something about me. The other thinks, this is showing me something. Same event, different meaning. And meaning is destiny. The first mind, the proving mind. The first mind lives to prove intelligence, to prove worth, to prove that it belongs.
This mind asks questions like, what will people think? What if I look stupid? What if this confirms my limits? So it chooses safety. Not because safety is better, but because it protects identity. This mind avoids challenges that might expose weakness, and slowly, quietly, it stops growing. The cost of needing to look smart. Needing to look smart has consequences. You avoid asking questions, starting from zero, entering rooms where you're not the best. You choose what you can already do. You repeat what you already know. And over time, your world becomes small, predictable, manageable, comfortable, and very expensive. The second mind, the learning mind. The second mind doesn't try to prove. It tries to understand. This mind knows something quietly powerful. Being a beginner is not shameful. Being stagnant is. So it asks different questions. What am I missing? What can I improve? What skill would change everything over time? This mind is not fearless. It just fears stagnation more than embarrassment. Why the learning mind wins long term. The learning mind grows invisibly. No announcements, no dramatic breakthroughs, just small upgrades, better decisions, faster recovery, clearer thinking. While others protect their image, this mind compounds skill. And compound growth always defeats early talent. Always. A quiet modern example. In the last decade, thousands of people tried building something online. Most stopped quietly. Not because it was impossible, but because the early phase felt uncomfortable. A few stayed. They posted before they were confident. They learned in public. They failed where others were watching. Today, they are called lucky, talented, overnight successes. But what really happened? Two minds, two futures. The emotional difference. Here's something subtle. The proving mind feels emotions as verdicts. Failure feels final. Feedback feels personal. Effort feels as evidence of weakness. The learning mind feels emotions as signals. Failure says adjust. Feedback says refine. Effort says you're building something real. Same emotions, different roles. Night reflection. Ask yourself gently. When something goes wrong, do you shrink or do you study? Do you protect your image or your future? No answers required tonight. Just notice. Why most people never switch minds? Because the proving mind feels safer at first. It gives quick confidence, familiar routines, predictable outcomes. The learning mind feels uncertain, messy, unfinished. but only one of them grows. And growth always feels uncertain before it feels powerful. The identity shift. At some point, builders make a quiet decision. They stop asking, "Am I good enough?" and start asking, "Am I improving?" That single shift removes pressure. You no longer need to be perfect. You only need to continue. And continuation is unstoppable. Sleep programming, deep, repetitive. Let this sink in slowly. You are not your last result. You are not your last mistake. You are not your current level. You are a process. Repeat quietly. I choose learning over proving. I choose growth over comfort. I choose the long game. If this episode felt different, that's because it wasn't trying to excite you. It was trying to reframe you. In the next episode, we'll explore something uncomfortable. Why many intelligent people never build wealth. And why intelligence alone can quietly become a trap. For now, rest. Two minds exist. You already know which one builds the future.
Why smart people stay poor. A quiet question. Slow your breathing. Let your shoulders drop. Tonight, we're not talking about intelligence the way schools talk about it. We're talking about a quieter truth. A question few people dare to ask. Why do some of the smartest people never build wealth, never build freedom, never build momentum? And why do others, sometimes less intelligent on paper, quietly surpass them? The answer is not unfair, but it is uncomfortable. Intelligence as an identity. For many people, intelligence becomes an identity, not just something they have, but something they are. And when intelligence becomes identity, it must be protected. Protected from mistakes, protected from failure, protected from contradiction. Because if you fail, it doesn't feel like something went wrong, it feels like you went wrong. So the mind adapts. It chooses paths where it can stay right. The hidden trade-off. Smart people learn early how to succeed. They get praise for being quick, for understanding fast, for getting it right the first time. Over time, the brain makes a deal. I will stay smart as long as I avoid situations where I might not be. And just like that, learning slows. Not because ability is gone, but because risk is avoided. Why smart minds overthink. Smart minds are excellent at analysis. They can see risks, flaws, missing pieces, worst-case scenarios. This feels like preparation, but often it's hesitation wearing a suit. Overthinking doesn't stop failure, it delays action. And delayed action kills compounding. The perfection trap. Perfection feels responsible. It sounds mature, logical, careful. I'll start when it's ready. I need more information. I just want to do it right. But perfection has a cost. While you refine, others iterate. While you wait, others learn. While you prepare, others compound. And compounding doesn't wait for perfect conditions. A quiet pattern. Look closely at real-world outcomes. Many highly intelligent people stay in planning mode, avoid public failure, choose stable paths, resist beginner status. Meanwhile, builders with less certainty start before clarity, fail visibly, adjust quickly, improve continuously. One group protects intelligence, the other uses experience. Only one grows. Intelligence versus adaptability. Here is the distinction that matters. Intelligence solves known problems. Adaptability solves new ones. Wealth is built in uncertainty. Markets change, tools evolve, rules shift. Those who need to feel smart struggle in environments where no one knows the answers. Those who are willing to look foolish learn faster. And speed of learning beats raw intelligence over time. Emotional resistance. Smart people feel emotions intensely. Embarrassment feels heavier. Criticism feels sharper. Failure feels louder. So they avoid environments that challenge their self-image. They stay in rooms where they already understand. But growth lives elsewhere. Always has. Night reflection, slow. Ask yourself softly, where have I delayed action because I wanted to feel confident first? Where have I confused thinking with progress? No judgment, just clarity. The builder's advantage. Builders don't wait to feel smart. They build to become capable. They treat early failure as tuition. They don't romanticize intelligence. They respect adaptability. They understand something simple. Results don't care how smart you feel. They respond to what you do consistently. Redefining smart. What if intelligence wasn't about being right, but about being adjustable? What if being smart meant changing faster, learning openly, updating beliefs, releasing old identities? That version of intelligence builds wealth. The other version protects comfort. Sleep programming, deep and steady. Let these thoughts slow down. Repeat gently in your mind. I don't need to be right. I need to be responsive. I don't need to feel smart. I need to keep learning. I release the pressure to protect an image. I choose progress over pride. If this episode unsettled you slightly, that's a good sign. Because growth always disrupts old identities before it builds new ones. In the next episode, we'll talk about a hidden enemy of wealth: the ego. Not arrogance, not confidence, but the quiet habit of defending who you think you are. For now, rest. You don't need to be the smartest person in the room. You only need to be the most adaptable.
The ego is the most expensive habit. The quiet enemy. Slow down. Let the day fade. Tonight, we're not talking about arrogance, not about confidence, not about pride in the obvious sense. We're talking about something quieter, the habit of protecting who you think you are. The ego doesn't shout, it whispers. And those whispers shape your financial life more than you realize. What the ego really wants. The ego wants one thing: consistency. Not growth, not truth, not expansion. Consistency with the identity you already know. It prefers being right over being rich. It prefers being respected over being adaptable. And it will sacrifice opportunity to avoid discomfort. How the ego hides. The ego rarely says, "I am afraid." Instead, it says, "That's not for me. I already know this. That won't work. I don't need help." These sound intelligent, mature, rational. But often they are defenses. Defenses against uncertainty. Defenses against beginnerhood. The financial cost of ego. Every time the ego wins, it charges a fee. You avoid feedback. You ignore data. You reject advice. You stay in familiar patterns while the world changes. The cost doesn't appear immediately. It appears years later as stagnation. Why the ego fears learning. Learning requires exposure. Exposure to mistakes, gaps, criticism, not knowing. The ego interprets this as danger. Not physical danger, identity danger. So it steers you toward environments where you can maintain status. But status doesn't compound. Skills do. A quiet observation. Notice this pattern in life. The people who grow the fastest are not the loudest. They ask questions. They listen longer. They change their minds. They are not trying to win conversations. They are trying to win decades. Ego versus feedback. Feedback is information. The ego treats it as an attack, so it reacts, justifying, explaining, defending. But feedback, when received calmly, is one of the fastest ways to improve. The ego slows learning. Silence accelerates it. Night reflection. Slow. Think gently. When was the last time you dismissed an idea because it challenged how you see yourself? No guilt, just noticing. Noticing is how the ego loosens its grip. The illusion of control. The ego loves control, predictability, certainty, being prepared. But wealth lives in uncertainty, in markets, in ideas, in risk. You cannot control growth. You can only participate in it. The wealthy ego, a different kind. Wealthy builders still have egos, but they relate to them differently. They don't ask, "How do I look?" They ask, "How does this work?" They are willing to look wrong today to be effective tomorrow. That trade-off is everything. The practice of letting go. Letting go of ego doesn't mean shrinking. It means loosening attachment to being right, to being admired, to being certain. In exchange, you gain speed, learning, adaptability. And adaptability creates wealth quietly. Sleep programming, deep, gentle. Let these ideas settle. Repeat slowly. I release the need to defend who I was. I allow myself to become someone new. Feedback is not an attack. Change is not a threat. Growth is safe. If this episode felt confronting, that's because the ego resists observation, but observation weakens it. In the next episode, we'll talk about something surprising: why effort, real effort, is not a weakness, and why avoiding effort keeps people poorer longer than they realize. For now, rest. You don't lose yourself by growing. You find a better version.
Effort is not a weakness. The misunderstood word. Slow your breathing. Tonight, we talk about a word that many people quietly avoid. Effort. Not because it is painful, but because it has been misunderstood. Effort is often associated with lack. If I were smarter, this would be easy. If I were talented, I wouldn't struggle. But this belief has quietly cost people their future. The myth of natural talent. We admire things that look effortless, success that appears smooth, skill that seems automatic, people who just get it. What we don't see is the invisible effort underneath. Hours of practice, years of adjustment, moments of doubt. Effort is edited out of the story, and that distortion creates fear. Why effort feels like exposure. Effort reveals something uncomfortable. It shows that you are not finished, that you are in progress. For the ego, this feels dangerous. If I have to try, maybe I'm not enough. So many people avoid effort not because it's hard, but because it feels vulnerable. Effort versus image. There are two paths. One protects image, the other builds ability. Protecting image avoids effort in public. Building ability embraces effort in private. One feels better now, the other compounds later. Wealth chooses the second path every time. The effortless lie. Find something easy. Follow your passion. Do what feels natural. These ideas sound comforting, but they hide a trap. Anything valuable feels awkward at first. Markets, skills, leadership,
decision-making. Ease comes after repetition, not before. Modern example, quietly real. Look at any modern builder, creators, investors, entrepreneurs. In the early phase, their work was messy. Their thinking was unclear. Their results were inconsistent. What separated them was not talent. It was tolerance for effort without immediate reward. Effort as a signal. Effort is not proof of weakness. It is proof of direction. You don't apply effort to things that don't matter. Struggle often means learning is happening, skill is forming, identity is updating. The mind resists this phase, but this phase builds everything. Night reflection, slow. Think quietly. Where have I avoided effort because I didn't want to feel exposed? Where did I confuse struggle with failure? No criticism, just clarity. The wealthy relationship with effort. Wealthy builders respect effort. They don't glorify burnout. They don't chase exhaustion, but they don't fear practice. They understand skill requires repetition. Repetition requires effort. Effort fades as competence grows. They move through effort, not around it. The long game advantage. Most people want shortcuts, but shortcuts skip learning, and learning is the real asset. Effort compounds quietly. Daily improvement beats occasional intensity, always. Redefining strength. Strength is not looking calm. Strength is staying present while learning something difficult. Strength is consistency without applause. Strength is effort without reassurance. This kind of strength builds wealth invisibly. Night reprogramming. Deep and repetitive. Let this settle gently. Repeat slowly. Effort is safe. Effort is temporary. Effort builds ability. I don't need ease at the beginning. I need consistency. I trust the process I am building. If this episode softened your resistance to effort, something important has shifted. In the next episode, we'll talk about identity. Why you don't chase money, money follows who you become. For now, rest. Effort is not a weakness. It is the doorway.
Rewriting your financial identity. Take a slow breath. Nothing needs to be done right now. Nothing needs to be solved. Tonight is about who you are becoming. Because money does not follow effort alone, and it does not respond to desire. Money responds to identity. Not the identity you talk about, but the one you consistently live from. Most people think they are chasing money, a higher income, more freedom, less stress. But what they are really chasing is a feeling, security, validation, control. And here is the quiet truth. Money does not change how you feel about yourself. It amplifies what is already there. Every person has a financial identity, an internal set of beliefs about what they deserve, what feels normal,
what feels risky, what feels impossible. This identity operates quietly. It decides what opportunities you notice, what risks you tolerate, what effort you sustain, what success feels safe. And most people never question it. If earning more money would require you to become someone unfamiliar, your mind will resist, not loudly, not aggressively, subtly, through procrastination, through distraction, through logic. People say, "I want more money," but their identity says, "I am someone who plays it safe. I am someone who avoids attention. I am someone who doesn't fail publicly." And identity always wins. You do not rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your self-image. This is not punishment. It is alignment. Rewriting your financial identity does not start with affirmations. It starts with permission. Permission to outgrow who you have been. Permission to disappoint old versions of yourself. Permission to feel uncomfortable without interpreting it as danger. Most people try to change outcomes without changing identity. They want new results while staying the same person. That creates friction. Wealth flows when behavior and identity match. Here is the shift builders make. They stop asking, "How do I make more money?" and start asking, "Who would I need to become for this level of money to feel normal?" Not exciting, not stressful, normal. That question changes behavior naturally. You make different decisions. You tolerate different discomforts. You stop negotiating with old limits. Not because you force yourself, but because the old identity no longer fits. Notice this carefully. The wealthy do not feel reckless. They feel aligned. What looks like confidence is familiarity. They have repeated the identity long enough that higher stakes feel ordinary. Your identity is built through evidence, not words, not wishes. Small actions repeated, keeping promises to yourself, following through quietly, learning consistently, adjusting without drama. Each action sends a signal. This is who I am now. You don't wake up one day as a different person. You accumulate proof, and the mind updates automatically. Many people wait to feel confident before acting. Builders act to give confidence something to stand on. That is the difference. You don't chase money. Money follows clarity, consistency, adaptability, self-trust. These are identity traits. Let this settle. You are not late. You are not behind. You are mid-construction, and construction is rarely comfortable.
Why comfort is the enemy of wealth. Take a slow breath. Nothing here is urgent. Nothing needs to be proven. But something important needs to be understood. Comfort feels safe, and because it feels safe, it feels right. But comfort has a cost, and that cost is rarely visible at first. Most people don't ruin their future with big mistakes. They ruin it with small comforts. Comfortable routines, comfortable opinions, comfortable limits. None of these feel dangerous. That's why they work so well. Comfort is the absence of friction, and friction is how growth announces itself. When friction disappears completely, growth usually has already stopped. The mind is designed to conserve energy. It prefers what it knows, what it has already survived. This makes comfort feel intelligent, but intelligence without expansion becomes stagnation. People often say, "I just want stability." What they mean is, "I don't want to feel uncertain." But uncertainty is where new value forms. Every skill, every business, every investment, they all begin in uncertainty. Notice this pattern. When something starts working, people stop questioning it. When income becomes predictable, curiosity fades. When routines feel easy, learning slows. This is not failure. It is comfort doing its job. Wealth is not built by extreme discomfort, but it is never built by total comfort either. There is always a stretch, a phase where effort increases before reward appears, a phase where learning feels awkward. That phase is unavoidable. Most people retreat at the first sign of discomfort, not because they are weak, but because they misinterpret the signal. They think discomfort means danger, but often it means expansion. Builders learn a different language. They translate discomfort as skill loading, identity updating, capacity expanding. They don't enjoy it, they don't dramatize it, they move through it. Comfort whispers, "Stay here." Growth whispers, "There is more." And the voice you follow shapes your future quietly. Comfort feels kind in the moment. It says, "You've done enough. You deserve rest. Don't push." And sometimes that is true. Rest is necessary. But rest is different from retreat. Retreat is when comfort becomes a lifestyle, when you avoid challenge by default, when you choose ease over progress, when discomfort feels like a warning. That's when momentum fades. Notice something subtle. The most fulfilled people are not the most comfortable. They are engaged. They are learning. They are building. They are participating. They feel alive because they are growing. Wealth requires engagement with uncertainty, with decision-making, with long-term thinking. Comfort numbs these muscles. Growth strengthens them. Let this settle gently. You don't need to chase discomfort. You only need to stop running from it. Repeat quietly, "I do not confuse comfort with safety. I allow healthy tension. I grow through stretch. I trust my ability to adapt." Comfort is not the enemy. Staying there is. In the next episode, we'll talk about time, why the wealthy think in decades while most people think in days. For now, rest. If something in you feels slightly unsettled, that's growth knocking softly. Soft fade into silence.
How the wealthy think about time. Take a slow breath. There is nowhere to rush to right now. Tonight is about time, not clocks, not schedules, but how time is felt. Because wealth is not built by people who are busy. It is built by people who are patient in the right way. Most people live inside short time frames. They think in days, in weeks, in immediate outcomes. They ask, "Is this working yet? Where are the results? Why hasn't it paid off?" This creates pressure. Pressure shortens vision. The wealthy relate to time differently. They don't need immediate proof. They don't panic in early phases. They understand something simple. Compounding is invisible before it is powerful. Time is the real leverage. Money is just a multiplier. When you rush decisions, you trade long-term gain for short-term relief. That trade feels good in the moment. It is very expensive later. Most people quit too early, not because they failed, but because nothing happened fast enough. They mistake silence for lack of progress, but silence is where compounding begins. Wealthy builders think in decades, not because they are slow, but because they are precise. They choose directions carefully, then allow time to do its work. They don't constantly change paths. They let systems mature. Short-term thinking asks, how can I get more now? Long-term thinking asks, what can I build that improves itself over time? The second question creates wealth. Notice how impatience shows up, rushing learning, switching strategies, abandoning efforts prematurely. Impatience is not urgency, it is discomfort with waiting. The wealthy do not wait passively. They prepare patiently. They refine, they adjust, they observe. They use time instead of fighting it. Every meaningful asset requires incubation, skills, businesses, reputation, trust. You cannot force growth. You can only support it consistently. The modern world rewards speed in some areas, but wealth is rarely one of them. Speed helps execution. Patience builds foundations. Both are needed, but in the wrong order, speed destroys progress. People who struggle financially often feel behind. This creates urgency. Urgency creates poor decisions. Poor decisions create more urgency. It becomes a loop. The wealthy break this loop by expanding their time horizon. They slow down their reactions so their results can speed up later. Think about this quietly. What are you trying to rush that actually needs time? What are you abandoning right before compounding would begin? Time does not reward intensity. It rewards consistency. Small actions repeated outperform big actions done briefly, always. Let this settle gently. You don't need to catch up. You need to stay long enough for growth to recognize you. Repeat softly in your mind, I think in years, not days. I trust slow growth. I allow compounding to work. I do not rush the process. I stay with what matters. Time is not against you. It is neutral. When used with patience, it becomes an ally. In the next episode, we will talk about failure, not as an obstacle, but as a private teacher that quietly shapes the wealthy. For now, rest. Nothing powerful is built in a hurry.
Failure as a private teacher. Take a slow breath. There is nothing to fix tonight. Nothing to prove. Tonight, we talk about failure. Not the dramatic kind, not the kind people post about later, but the quiet kind, the kind that happens when no one is watching. Most people see failure as a verdict, a final answer, a label, a stopping point. But failure is not a conclusion. It is information. And information, when received calmly,
changes everything. The reason failure feels so heavy is not because it hurts. It's because of the story we attach to it. This means I'm not good enough. This confirms my limits. This proves I should stop. These stories are learned. They are not facts. The wealthy relate to failure differently. They don't dramatize it. They don't broadcast it. They don't personalize it. They study it, quietly, privately, precisely. Failure is a private teacher. It does not teach in public. It does not explain itself emotionally. It waits for curiosity. And most people never ask it questions. Failure shows you where your assumptions were wrong, what you didn't know yet, which skills are missing, how reality actually works. This information is extremely valuable, but only if you stay present long enough to receive it. Most people rush past failure. They distract themselves. They nub it. They reframe it too quickly. They say, "It wasn't meant to be. It wasn't my fault. It didn't matter anyway." And the lesson disappears. Builders do something different. They pause. They ask, what exactly failed? What part worked? What would I adjust next time? They separate emotion from data. And that separation creates growth. Failure rarely repeats when its lesson is learned, but it repeats endlessly when it is avoided. That is why some people feel stuck in the same patterns, not unlucky, unfinished. There is no shame in failure. There is cost in ignoring it. Notice how early failure feels. Embarrassing, unsettling, uncomfortable. These feelings are not warnings, they are signals that learning is happening. The wealthy don't become confident because they avoid failure. They become calm because they've failed enough times to understand it. Failure loses its power once it becomes familiar. Many people wait to feel confident before they try again. Builders try again to train confidence. That order matters. Failure is not the opposite of success. Avoidance is. Failure moves you forward if you stay engaged. Avoidance freezes you while time keeps moving. Think quietly. What failure have I been avoiding revisiting because it felt uncomfortable? What lesson might still be waiting there? No pressure, just awareness. Failure does not need motivation. It needs interpretation. When you stop asking, "What does this say about me?" and start asking, "What does this show me?" everything changes. Let this settle gently. Repeat softly. Failure teaches me. I listen calmly. I adjust intelligently. I do not fear feedback. I use it. I stay in the process. Failure is not personal. It is instructional. And those who learn privately win publicly later. In the final episode, we will bring everything together. One quiet law that explains why some people build wealth steadily, while others remain stuck despite effort. For now, rest. Nothing you learned the hard way was wasted.
The quiet law of wealth. Take a slow breath. You've heard many ideas in this series about growth, about effort, about ego, about time, about failure. Tonight, we don't add anything new. We simplify, because truth at its deepest level is simple. There is a quiet law that governs wealth. It is not written anywhere. It is not taught directly, and it cannot be sold as a shortcut. But it works every time. The law is this: your life expands only to the level that you are willing to stay present while being uncomfortable. Not dramatic discomfort, not suffering, but the quiet discomfort of growth. Most people think wealth is about doing more work, more strategies, more information. But wealth is more often about not pulling back when things feel uncertain. Every step forward creates tension, new responsibility, new expectations, new risks. The mind asks, is this safe? And most people answer by retreating. They call it balance. They call it realism. They call it being smart. But it is usually fear wearing polite language. Builders answer differently. They don't rush forward recklessly. They simply don't retreat at the first sign of tension. They stay. They learn. They adjust. And staying is what compounds. Wealth is not built by the boldest moves. It is built by the longest presence. Staying with a skill. Staying with a direction. Staying with discomfort long enough for it to transform into competence. This is why many people start strong and fade quietly. Not because they failed, but because they withdrew too early. The quiet law of wealth does not reward intensity. It rewards tolerance. Tolerance for being a beginner, for not knowing yet, for learning slowly, for feeling unsure, for growing publicly or privately. This tolerance creates momentum. Once momentum exists, wealth becomes mechanical, not easy, but predictable. At this point, you may realize something important. You were never missing motivation. You were never missing intelligence. You were missing permission. Permission to stay when leaving felt easier. Nothing in this series was about becoming someone else. It was about removing the habits that prevented growth. Let this settle. You don't need to rush your future. You only need to stop abandoning it. Repeat quietly in your mind, I stay present in growth. I do not retreat from discomfort. I allow time to work with me. I am building something real, and I stay. If you're still listening, that tells me something. You are not here for noise. You are not here for hype. You are here for depth. This channel was created for people who build quietly, who think long-term, who understand that real wealth starts in the mind. If this series spoke to you, subscribe to premium audiobooks, not for motivation, but for mental wealth, for clarity, for the long game. There is no final push, no dramatic ending, just this understanding. You are not behind.
You are becoming, and becoming is enough. Rest now. Growth continues even in silence.